हाल है बुशरा, कैसी हैं आप?
बिल्कुल ठीक ठाक, थैंक यू। What I would suggest, आ रहे हैं साउंड के, तो I would suggest कि आप शुरू कर दें
जी
से, and I can.
We are live. Yeah, I think we are live. So
can you put everyone on the screen, for the four of us, or not?
Salman,
Zaigam, can we all be on the screen together? For चार आदमी की तो जगह है मेरे।
जी, we are going live on our Facebook page, which is Progressive Students Collective page. It's already live on Facebook now.
अच्छा, okay.
Right. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on wherever you are listening from. Adab, I am Zaigam Abbas, and I will be moderating today's very important session along with my co-host Salman Skandar. Before I move on to the introduction of our panelists today, I would like to quickly tell you about the format of today's discussion. We will have about 40 to 50 minutes of question answer session with our panelists. And if we are spared with some time, we will take a few of the questions from our listeners who will be posting their queries during the live stream. Ladies and gentlemen, it would indeed be an understatement to say that Afghanistan is passing through one of the difficult times. After almost 20 years of a protracted war, media reports suggest that the Taliban resurgence is not only imminent, but a ground reality as well. With that, there are also the reports that Pakistan's control over Taliban, enforcing them to bring to the negotiation table, is also waning. Pakistan's National Security Advisor, Mueed Yusuf, was quoted as saying earlier this week that Pakistan is pushing the Taliban to return to the negotiation table, but its leverage is waning as the group gains more ground in Afghanistan. So in today's discussion, we will talk about the strategic implications of such a possible takeover by Taliban. And we will also talk a bit about what the future holds for Afghanistan and the people of Afghanistan, largely the South Asian region, and of course for the rest of the world as well. With me today are two of the most learned speakers to share their insights on this important issue. We have Ahmed Rashid, who is an award-winning journalist and a renowned foreign policy author. He has written extensively on Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Central Asia. I'm also pleased to say that we both are old Dravians. Rashid is also an alumni of the Government College Lahore, from where I studied as well. Our second speaker is Ms. Bushra Gohar. She's a politician, an analyst, and a former member of Pakistan's National Assembly from 2008 to 2013. She was formerly the senior vice president of Awami National Party and currently an activist of Pashtun Tahaffuz movement in Pakistan, which is a rights-based movement for ethnic Pashtun community in the country. So without any further ado, I would like to go straight to Ahmed Rashid. First, Rashid, thank you for joining us today. We are hearing these really disturbing news that Taliban are gaining a lot of ground in Afghanistan. At the same time, some analysts also opine that the reports of Taliban advancement are exaggerated. They tend to point out that it is the part of Taliban's media strategy to hype up and wage a kind of psychological warfare. What is your analysis of the current situation?
Well, the Taliban have taken 6 cities in 7 days. And it's been an extraordinary offensive, a military strategy that they never had themselves before. They have suddenly adopted a military strategy which is reminiscent of the Blitzkrieg or the German troops advance on France at the beginning of the Second World War. And Kabul is now I think in the next few days, it will be surrounded. Kandahar will be surrounded. They will hesitate to move into these cities because of the potential bloodshed, because going into Kabul for the Taliban would mean having to kill a great number of people. So I fear very much that I think the international community, particularly the Americans, have made a huge mistake by speedily withdrawing like this. I think Pakistan, which has followed a dual policy of both wanting a peace process to be activated and yet at the same time supporting the Taliban in the belief that the Taliban will help with the domestic situation in Pakistan, I think, again, is a false assumption. Both Iran and Russia have been involved in the past in providing the Taliban with support, especially those Taliban on their respective borders in Central Asia and Iran. So you have complete, as it were, despite the so-called movement towards Doha and another round of Doha, you have real silence by the international community. There was a UN Security Council meeting the other day. It didn't resolve anything. And I think the crisis is going to get deeper and deeper, and especially if there is no deal with the Taliban and the Ashraf Ghani government, I think we're going to see much greater chaos, much greater bloodshed. The pouring of refugees into Pakistan, whether we close the border or not, it doesn't. When people move as refugees with nothing to lose, they're not going to hesitate at a wire fence or at a border. And the estimates by the UN and some people yesterday was that there would be something like 1.5 million refugees coming out of Afghanistan in the next few weeks. We're in no position to look after so many refugees. This whole region is poverty stricken. Iran is bankrupt. Pakistan is nearly bankrupt. There is no country which is able to sustain these numbers, not even Central Asia. So I think all in all, we're looking at the possibility of real destruction in Afghanistan, not to speak of the plight of women and education and all the civil society that has all developed in the last 20 years. But we're looking at mayhem in the region as a whole. And people who are saying that this would be very good for Pakistan are completely mistaken, because this is not going to lead to a suppression of extremism in Pakistan. It's going to exaggerate and intensify the extremists and in Pakistan also.
Well, since you talked about Doha peace deal, let me ask you this. You wrote in an Al Jazeera opinion piece on 13th March 2019 about the US Taliban peace deal, quote, the path to peace is still long and tedious, but today Afghans have more reason to be hopeful than ever before. Looking at how the Taliban feel emboldened today and the way they are gaining ground, do you think the Taliban are honoring the accords of the peace deal the way it was envisaged earlier? And if it is not, what are the reasons for the breach of these accords?
Well, I think the initial mistake was by the Americans, who gave away far too many concessions to the Taliban far too quickly, such as, for example, releasing 5,000 prisoners, all of whom have turned around and come into the front line of the Taliban offensive. And there were other concessions that the Americans gave that were, I think, gave the Taliban a sense of their own importance, and the fact that now they had the Americans on the run, they could just squeeze the Americans more and more. And the Americans frittered away the leverage that they had, to the point where today, if Zalmay Khalilzad is again going into Doha, I don't see what leverage, frankly, the Americans have. Because the world is at the moment doesn't seem very interested in saving the Ashraf Ghani government. That was the first mistake. I think the second mistake has been made by Ashraf Ghani. I think we have had a failure of Afghan leadership. His cabinet is disorganized, and now we're talking about revamping the militias. But that may be a good thing, but not if he's going to be in control. And unfortunately, he tends to try and micromanage, policy, the military, and everything, and that has led to this kind of chaos that we see in Kabul today. That the leadership, there's real lack of leadership, as it were. And at the third, I described the situation of the regional countries, the neighbors of Afghanistan. They all want their own thing. They're all paying lip service to peace and to stability, but they all want their own national interest to come first, and they're all trying to cut deals with the Taliban that the Taliban will treat them favorably and well. And I think you don't have any player at the moment in Afghanistan who is doing the right thing.
Bushra Saiba, let me get your opinion how the resurgence of Taliban is made possible. I mean, 20 years of an imperial war with the countless casualties and the whole Taliban leadership of the early years, completely wiped off. And still, after all these years, we are sort of hearing that Taliban are once again on the rise. What do you think are the most important factors responsible for their so-called resurgence?
Bushra Saiba, Bushra ji, please unmute yourself. Salman, unmute Bushra.
Okay. Well, it's very interesting. Something that Ahmed Rashid Saab said about the Ghani government. We have to accept that it's the legitimate elected government of Afghanistan. And whether the world likes it or not, the people are supporting, people of Afghanistan are supporting the Ghani government. And we should also support and stand in solidarity with the elected government. Now, if tomorrow we have Imran Khan in Pakistan, who is badly failing in every aspect, yet we don't expect the TTP to come and take over. Taliban basically are terrorists. And what the Doha deal did was to give them legitimacy and delegitimize Ghani government, weaken the elected government in Afghanistan. Actually not take the Taliban terrorists, and if the American West, it was ill-intentioned, and the effects we are experiencing right now, the Taliban sanctuaries in Pakistan and elsewhere, and should have talked about a ceasefire. But Doha deal did not do that, because the intention was to legitimize and repackage these terrorists. And that, in my opinion, the UN needs to step in. The UN has failed to play a role in Afghanistan, and Taliban, with the support they get, I mean, the Afghan security forces, the people of Afghanistan, they're fighting them on a daily basis. Yet, the Taliban are getting fresh support from neighboring countries. So how do you expect the country to fight the terrorists when fresh contingents are being sent to fight along the terrorists? And there are now support from other terrorist groups as well. So in my opinion, this whole thing was intended. The Doha deal was meant to create chaos in Afghanistan. The US and all allies have blood on their hands.
Right, right. Bushra, since you mentioned about these armed contingents being sent to the other side of Durand Line, let me come to an important point. At a national security briefing in Pakistan a couple of months ago, former Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi made an interesting comment. He said that Pakistan needs to rely on Pashtun people in the tribal belt as a tool of, strategic depth in Afghanistan. What he meant essentially was that the goodwill of these people with the Afghan government and the Afghan people can go a long way in strengthening the Pakistan-Afghanistan relationship. Do you think Pakistan in any way can think about such a move as a policy option instead of making efforts to bring Taliban to the negotiation table?
Well, first of all, Pakistan hasn't really brought the Taliban to the negotiation because Doha deal is not a peace deal, in my opinion. It is just a withdrawal. The US wanted to leave, and US sat with the terrorists to get a way out and to leave Afghanistan in chaos. This is the intended outcome of Doha deal, which is criminal in my opinion. Now, when you talk about Shahid Khaqan Abbasi saying that the Pashtuns and the Pashtuns have suffered on both sides of the Durand Line, and we don't want war. We've always talked against or resisted the terrorists on our soil as well. The Pakistan Parliament, when I was in Parliament also, we had a unanimous resolution that our soil will not be used by terrorists and the sanctuaries that are there will be cleared. That hasn't happened. Now, unless the policy in Pindi changes, and that is what Shahid Khaqan Abbasi should have talked about changing the policies so that we talk about the people and the elected government of Afghanistan, that we accept the sovereignty of Afghan people and the independence. Until the policies change in Pindi and Islamabad, it's going to be very difficult. This is the strategic depth. These are the strategic assets. We've got all the shooters here. Why do we have, why are the dead bodies coming to Pakistan? It isn't a popular thing going on in Afghanistan. The Afghan people are standing up. You must have heard about the popular uprising against the Taliban. The people don't want, they've already experienced the barbaric rule of the Taliban supported by other countries. Now, this is a proxy war that we must all stand up against because it is going to affect everyone in this region. It isn't just going to be, Afghans have experienced decades of war, but it's going to come to us now. The flames are going to engulf the entire region. The 5,000 terrorists that the US forced the Afghan government to release have joined in the fight. Other terrorist groups are joining in the fight because terrorist stakes are in violence and they are fighting for others. Others are providing them all the technical support, all the cannon fodder. And unfortunately, the cannon fodder is coming from here. These are our kids that are being sent to. So, and the dead bodies are coming, and then we've seen processions for these dead bodies by the Taliban. And the government has not really done anything about it or investigated. So it's going to affect us, but Pakistan, unless Pakistan changes its Afghan policy, it has invested a lot in this policy. But what we also found was in the Doha deal that the Western powers also started to promote the Taliban and gave them legitimacy. In my opinion, they gave them the license to kill the Afghans, and they're responsible. Now, we see the displacements in Afghanistan. There's a humanitarian crisis. As a neighbor, we should all be sitting together and collecting support for the displaced people in Afghanistan. But we're not, we're supporting, we've seen in our media, there's a lot of promotion of the Taliban. And we've seen Pakistan's foreign minister speaking for the Taliban, saying that the Taliban have reformed and they're very intelligent people. Now, show me that intelligence. There's barbarism that we see in Afghanistan. This policy is going to, it's suicidal. I've called it suicidal policy, Afghan policy. It must change, and Pindi and Islamabad has to change. The parliament has become dysfunctional, and we need the parliament to play a role also.
Exactly. As Bushra ji just mentioned, how the flames will come towards us. So I'll ask my next question from Ahmed Rashid Saab as to what can be the possible implications of an emboldened Taliban in Afghanistan towards Pakistan, specifically in the context of TTP. In your assessment, do you think that TTP is independent from Afghan Taliban, or are they in the same team?
Well, certainly not. And I think this, exposes Pakistan's policy as being really short-sighted. The fact is that the TTP is seeking shelter in the border regions of Afghanistan. They are protected there by the Afghan Taliban. They are fed, they are protected, etc., by the Afghan Taliban. Now, why is that happening? The Afghan Taliban are supposed to be allies and friends of Pakistan. All the leaders of the Afghan Taliban are living in Pakistan. So why is it that we cannot put pressure on the Afghan Taliban and tell them, please wrap up this TTP, because this is threatening us. We are your friends. We've done you a great favor. You've stayed as guests in our country for 20 years. Why don't you wrap up these people? But unfortunately, that is not happening. It's common sense to understand that if the Taliban are going to take Kabul, the TTP is going to be emboldened. And by the way, when the Taliban take Kabul, they're not going to listen to Pakistan anymore about anything, leave alone just the TTP. Remember what happened in the 90s. We asked them to send back these militant groups who were killing Shias. They refused. We asked them to stop destroying the Buddha statues. They refused. So even the Taliban, as dependent on Pakistan as they are still very independent-minded, and they're going to do exactly what they think is in their interest. And right now we know that there are dozens of military, well, certainly a dozen militant groups from Central Asia, from Pakistan, from the Arab world, including Al-Qaeda, all of them living and fighting for the Taliban. Now, the Doha deal was based on the simple premise that the Afghan Taliban would be giving up these groups and making sure that they didn't have any role. But in this current fighting, they seem to have had a bigger role than ever before. And I do support very strongly what Begum Bushra Gohar has said about this need for a policy change, and the fact that we cannot continue along a path which is supporting extremism and then prevents us from benefiting economically, politically, and in foreign policy. And she's perfectly right when she says, the foreign minister and the government are essentially in their statements giving credibility to the Taliban. They're not giving any credibility to the Ghani government. And in return, unfortunately, the result is that the establishment accuses the Ghani government of being Indian agents. And well, what can they do when they want an independent foreign policy, they want the sovereignty of Afghanistan. They don't want to be dictated by neighboring states, whoever those neighboring states may be. And a more rational policy is desperately needed on the behalf of Pakistan. And unfortunately, I don't see that rational policy emerging very soon.
Well, I want to come to that point of legitimizing Taliban at a time when an emboldened Taliban are beheading civilians in Afghanistan. And we see the advancement that they have made in the last month or odd. At a time when there should have been an international outrage, we are seeing that these regional powers, including China, the foreign minister of China recently had a meeting with the Taliban leadership. So how do you describe this situation where all the regional players, instead of pressurizing or putting pressure on Taliban, they do continue to legitimize the Taliban leadership, and this is how they eventually end up strengthening the Taliban? How do you see this policy of China and other regional players getting closer to Taliban?
Well, look, I mean, it's realpolitik. I mean, it's a fact of life that the Taliban, may force the surrender of the Kabul government and come into power. But the lack of unity amongst the regional powers is, first of all, primary. There is no unity between Pakistan, Iran, China, Russia, and these countries. They have their meetings, but the meetings come up with nothing practical in real terms or real pressure on the Taliban. The Chinese meeting, I was very disappointed, because here's the foreign minister of China meeting with non-state actors, and all he talked about was the Uyghur issue and asking the Taliban not to damage relations by supporting the Muslim Uyghurs in China. And there was no mention of ceasefire, of bringing the war to an end, urging the Taliban to end the war as quickly as possible. So, that was very, very disturbing. Russia and Iran's interests are also being expressed. Russia wants to preserve Central Asia as its own area of influence, and it asked the Taliban also not to play any role in Central Asia, which would lead to threats in that region. And the same with Iran. Iran is, of course, in a very bad way economically and politically, but Iran has not played a real role to try and bring the regional countries together. So I have been promoting for a long time that the UN should come in and should be in the Security Council, should set up a UN team endorsed by the Security Council in order to take and make an estimate of what needs to be done in Afghanistan, and also to help the peace process. Because remember, the Doha process, a lot of people are not there. The Iranians are not there because they won't talk, the Americans won't talk to them. The Americans have got a bad relationship with both China and with Russia. So how can the Americans lead the negotiations for peace in Doha when three of the main players are not in a position to talk to the Americans, or the Americans won't talk to them? So it's a complicated, confusing picture at the moment. But unfortunately, I think the main thing is that there has been no regional unity. When all these countries face a threat from a Taliban victory or Taliban revenge killings, in which tens of thousands of Afghans start fleeing their country and become refugees in the region.
I'll come towards Bushra ji. So what can be the first step for Pakistan and for de-escalating the situation in Afghanistan, and the policy options to get out of this conundrum and for the peace in Afghanistan?
The Taliban, the process started a lot earlier, and I attended a few security dialogues in Herat, where most of the think tanks from all over the world, and especially from the US and UK, they were trying to sell, and these were also former diplomats, security people, they were trying to sell, giving certain areas to the Taliban that are already in Taliban control. And I asked them whether, you see, they've asked the people who have suffered as a result of the Taliban control in those areas, and how can provinces be handed over to the terrorists? And if we believe in democracy and the constitution of Afghanistan, then there is a process for elections, for the people to elect. And if these terrorists who want to take over by force were so popular, they would have gone for elections and they would have been elected to wherever they are. Why were these countries trying to force them on Afghanistan? So in my opinion, this process of legitimizing and repackaging the terrorists started a lot earlier, and in these the various push through the various think tanks. In my opinion, Pakistan is not ready to change policy. It has invested a lot in the Taliban project, and this project is being run from here. Pakistan doesn't understand that this is so suicidal that, you know, if they think that destroying Afghanistan is going to build Pakistan's interest, it is totally wrong. It is also ridiculous that regional countries and world powers are asking Taliban terrorists to fight a certain group that they feel threatened from. This is quite ridiculous. That, you know, Ahmed Rashid Saab called them non-state actors. They're terrorists. They're all shades of terrorists that are joining hands, and world powers and regional powers are asking these Taliban terrorists to fight for them, to safeguard their interests against others who are threatening them. So Pakistan has to review the Taliban project, in my opinion, is going to be embedded in Afghanistan, because the people of Afghanistan are not willing, even if the whole world thinks that Taliban are going to take over and they're rejoicing and glorifying these attacks, these terrorist barbaric attacks. The people of Afghanistan are not willing to give them power. If the Taliban want, if they're so popular, they should come through the constitutional process. So Pakistan has very limited options right now, but unfortunately Pakistan is under martial law, and so the will of the people, it's difficult because dissenters, those who are questioning these policies, are being silenced. And the controls are not even with the puppet government or the parliament. So it is a difficult situation that we are under. People, human rights activists like Haquq-e-Khalq, I'm glad that you're organizing the Progressive Students Collective. It's very good that the mainstream is now coming and facilitating discussions. We have been talking about it for a while now, and labeled as traitors. We're questioning these suicidal policies because we have suffered, but I'm glad that mainstream, like Haquq-e-Khalq, has organized this debate, and we need more debate amongst ourselves so that we can question and we can find a way out, at least, because the whole region is going to suffer. Afghanistan has suffered a lot already. They've been at war for 20 years. Yet we see that wherever they've had an opportunity, they've tried to rebuild themselves. So we need to support the people of Afghanistan. We need to support the elected government of Afghanistan. However weak, there's no excuse to just start pointing fingers at the weaknesses. We all have weaknesses. Like I said, we are under martial law right now. We need an uprising against the martial law, actually, in Pakistan.
Right. I do want to come back for some of your final comments on what is the popular sentiment in Afghanistan. But before that, before I come to you for your final comments, I just want to ask this from Rashid Saab, that your final comment on what needs to be done now, especially at a time when Taliban are gaining this momentum. Do you think, is there any leverage with Pakistan and America right now to force the Taliban and save the Afghan Republic?
I think Pakistan has enormous leverage. First of all, dealing with the Taliban who are living and on our soil. The leadership, the main Shura, Peshawar Shura and Quetta Shura are both living in Pakistan. The leaders are here. The supply links are here. And I think Pakistan can play a major role in reducing the conflict in Afghanistan if it was to change its policy. But as Bushra says, there's very little chance of Pakistan doing that simply because they've invested so much in this current policy. And I think this current policy is going to come back and slap us in the face, because there's no question that the Taliban, once in power, are not going to be held hostage by any neighboring state. They will be very independent-minded. The Pashtun character, we all know, is very stubborn and resists any kind of foreign manipulation. And the Taliban leadership is still largely Pashtun. And yes, I mean, the danger of the Taliban trying to bring the Pakistani Pashtun into some kind of alliance, at least the militant groups into some kind of alliance, is going to pose a huge risk to Pakistan and in particular to the Pashtun population. So we should be aware of all the dangers. Unfortunately, as Bushra says, there's no debate here. There's no serious debate in parliament. The media is heavily censored. So nobody is getting any third opinion as to what should be done or what is going wrong. And that was never the case before. When the Soviets left, when Najibullah was killed, when the Taliban took Kabul, there was huge debate and discussion in Pakistan at what our policy should be. At the moment, unfortunately, there's no debate at all. There's complete silence from the media, except to reiterate the statements made by the foreign ministry or something like that.
Well, absolutely. The one lesson that we don't learn that we can get from our history is that we don't really learn from history, as you mentioned about the debates in the in the aftermath of Dr. Najibullah's assassination. I just want to just a final comment and a question from Bushraji. Bushraji, since you keep a keen eye on the developments in Afghanistan, would you be able to tell us what is exactly the popular sentiment in Afghanistan right now? We have seen these episodes of people chanting Allahu Akbar against Taliban in different cities. How do you describe the popular sentiment in Afghanistan against Taliban right now?
Well, we've already seen that the people of Afghanistan do not want the Taliban. They are suffering. The attacks that we have seen, the children being killed in these attacks, women killed just because the Taliban, they didn't fit the Taliban's whatever. So in my opinion, the popular sentiment there is that they don't want the Taliban take over. And they're standing with the Ghani government and the security forces. If the Taliban was so popular, why would people be leaving their homes and becoming IDPs, living under worse conditions? They don't support the Taliban. They know that the Taliban are proxies, that they're not from amongst them. that they will destroy Afghanistan further. So the popular and the Allahu Akbar uprising was a spontaneous people's uprising starting from Herat, and it caught on in all the other provinces. So there is support, and the security forces are doing a very good job, and the people are supporting them. They're fighting these terrorists on a daily basis. Like I said, if there is so much support coming from across the Durand line, how do you expect the security forces to, because they're fighting bravely and they have the support of the people of Afghanistan. So I think that Taliban, like I said, they will not succeed, but they will, their attacks are going to affect the people, and I can see a humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan that we should be very worried and concerned about. And we should actually, as people, as human rights activists, we should actually be mobilizing support for the people who've been displaced by these terrorists. So in my opinion, these attacks with all this that is going on, the Taliban are not going to take over. They are not going to succeed because the people will not let them. That's the. But I also feel that the Pashtuns are doing it, but we need mainstream political parties playing a role in Pakistan. And unfortunately, like I've said, and I don't like to repeat myself, but they've surrendered to Pindi. And they're taking telephone calls, orders on telephone calls. We need a political process, and debates are actually initiated by political parties within their ranks and amongst themselves. We need at APC immediately to just discuss what is going on and to push for a policy change, because Pakistan has to act responsibly. It can't continue the way it has been.
Well, this is just one part of that small effort that we are trying to do from the platform of Haqooq-e-Khalq movement and Progressive Students Collective, and we do hope that such kind of debates and conversations do lead to a very strong narrative against Afghanistan, against Afghan Taliban in Pakistan, and so that we could be able to change the perception around, as we see that, you know, there are these very horrifying pictures in social media where people celebrate the victories of Taliban, which is rather very unfortunate in the country. So with that, I will hand over to my co-host Salman. If we have a final few questions from our audience, then you can ask. Otherwise, please conclude the session.
I think we're out of time, so we'll just have to conclude. So the whole world has its eyes on Afghanistan for different reasons. The world is, worried about the future of women and minorities in Afghanistan, as we see Taliban capturing one province after another in Afghanistan. But on the brighter side, we also see people raising slogans of Allahu Akbar to resist Taliban in favor of democracy. It is the people who have been suffering from the war, which was imposed on them by the short-sighted policies of an imperialist power. Therefore, the people must be listened. Whatever the outcome of this war, one thing is quite clear, that it will have consequences for the people of this whole region, particularly for the people on the bordering areas of Pakistan. So with that note, we can only hope that peace comes to Afghanistan, and in the end, people stand victorious in this unending war. With a thanks to our panelists today, we now end this session. Thank you all for being with us.